This video is brought to you by patreon.com/worsttake. Get access to exclusive live streams and Discord servers, on-screen shoutouts, and early access to some videos when you join now. Help make sure that we can continue to make content like this by supporting the Patreon. Links are in the description down below. All right, so some good news on the JOK front, and also Kevin Stefanski finally names Jameis Winston the starter for the rest of the way here to go. And there are some questions and some things I want to talk about surrounding that. So let's start with JOK. It seems as if he's okay. He tweeted something confirming that he was okay earlier today. And then the reports are that JOK has left the hospital. He's up and walking around and all good. Now, I don't know if that means he's healthy yet, right? It just means the worst possible outcome of what could have happened with that injury did not happen. We'll see what happens with JOK. I think there's a chance he might have a shoulder injury, because if you look at that video and you look how JOK landed after getting hit by Derrick Henry, he didn't land very awkwardly on his shoulder. So I am worried about that. But also, nobody said that he had anything wrong with his shoulder or even indicated. So he might just be okay. Sometimes you get a stinger, or sometimes you get hit hard, you get knocked unconscious, and your body just shuts down for a little bit, but you end up being okay in the long term. Denzel Ward's concussion has been confirmed. We'll see what happens with this. I don't know how to talk about the Denzel Ward concussion stuff, to be honest with you, because I don't know how Denzel Ward handles the concussion stuff. Like, I think there is something there with the concussion stuff, a piece of information that the team is aware of and Denzel Ward is aware of, but maybe we're not aware of. And if we were aware of this, it would change how we view it, because it seems like we're just operating on two different sets of information when it comes to how many concussions Denzel Ward has, when it comes to the urgency on this. So hopefully they just have more information than us and are operating because of that. But Denzel Ward in concussion protocol again. It's unfortunate too, because he's been having a hell of a season. But let's kind of circle back to that, right? The Browns aren't really thin at DB, so I don't expect them to have to sign a DB to get things going. They can live with just promoting somebody from the practice squad. But at linebacker, the Browns are pretty thin here. And there are some interesting names that the Browns could go after that could be linebackers for the Cleveland Browns, because what JOK is kind of your Mike. I guess you could have Jordan Hicks take over for your Mike, but you're a little bit flexible on what guys you can go after, so you can just go best player available. Some interesting names available at linebacker, right? Jamin Davis is an interesting name here. He was a first-round pick of a few years ago, I think, of the Washington Commanders, somebody that the Browns thought very highly of in the draft. So him being available while the Browns are probably going to be looking for a linebacker here, because it's not just JOK being injured, but it's also like the in and out injuries of Jordan Hicks that they've been dealing with. This is somebody who's 25, has a ton of potential. He's an athletic linebacker, again, one that the Browns were really interested in coming out of college. So Shaq Leonard is a big name that I think a lot of people will gravitate to, because he's the most decorated linebacker available. I don't know if this is where the Browns go, but, you know, if you're Shaq Leonard, if you're looking for a situation where you can do what you're used to doing, this could be a spot for you, right? The Browns are down to playing a lot of Devin Bush. So I couldn't imagine Shaq Leonard would be worse than Devin Bush at this point here. Deion Jones would be a player who's familiar with at least the building and has been in Cleveland. Last time he was here, I believe it was Joe Woods. So he's not super familiar with what the Browns do, but he does kind of fit the athletic profile of what they want from a linebacker. And then you go with old familiar names like Jacob Phillips, right? That'd be a name you could bring in, somebody who has some experience here with the Jim Schwartz system. And Tony Fields is another guy that they put on the field a lot last year when they had injuries. So depending on the seriousness of this injury for JOK, and if he's going to be projected to miss any time, then that means that they're probably going to have to go out for somebody. I'm assuming that he's going to miss some time here, right? Because you don't spend a night at the hospital and play the next week. That's like crazy. So they're going to need to sign somebody because they're really, really thin. You saw the Browns out there running dime like pretty much the whole second half. So they're really thin at linebacker. I think if I were a betting man, I would bet that they would go after Jamin Davis first. Again, the Browns really liked him, wanted to draft him in the second or third round when he came out. So I think that would be somebody that they look at. I doubt they go after like a Shaq Leonard. I think second would probably be Tony Fields. Third would be Jacob Phillips. Maybe they do a Hail Mary and go for like a Shaq Leonard if they're really desperate. But I think they only go for a Shaq Leonard if they think that JOK is going to be out for the rest of the season. And it doesn't look like he's going to be out for the rest of the season. It looks like he might miss some time, but it doesn't seem like he's going to miss the entire season. And I think that's the only time where they would have considered doing something like that. So that's where I'm at with this whole thing with JOK's injury. Let's talk about Jameis being announced as the starter, because there still was this thought process for some people that even if Jameis plays well, you would get to the bye week and switch him out. And a lot of this kind of stemmed from the Bo Bishop report that he kind of mentioned offhand. I don't even think he meant to report it, where he said that some of the players are already tired of Jameis. I mentioned this at the time. It's likely that that report was very much overblown. I don't think it was fabricated. Jameis is an eccentric person, and he might do too much at times. And when that dude who does too much is not playing, you might get tired of that guy, right? And he did too much. He audibled out of a call, whatever the reason it was, and that probably irritated some people because he literally only had one job. But when that guy's your starting quarterback, you tend to have more slack for stuff like that, especially if that guy is playing as well as any quarterback has played this season. And there was some concern of like, oh, well, the distaste for him is so strong, and maybe that Kevin Stefanski was setting Jameis up to fail by putting Ken Dorsey as the play call. A lot of weird conspiracies formulated this last week because the Browns were doing stuff and not really explaining it super well. But I think it all makes sense when you really understand who Jameis Winston is. And I think this is the key part. When you understand who Ken Dorsey is, I think a lot of people don't really have a good understanding of Ken Dorsey and who he is as an offensive coordinator or as a play caller. And when you understand like what the philosophy is with the dude like Jameis in this offense and what the Browns were trying to do by bringing in Ken Dorsey and Tommy Rees in the first place. A lot of this stuff got simplified as they're doing this to make Deshaun comfortable. And yeah, that was part of it, right? It was part of it that they brought in Ken Dorsey and all of this to make Deshaun more comfortable. But another part of this was that they were going to have to evolve what Kevin Stefanski does and what the Stefanski offense looks like in order to be able to craft it around the new generation of quarterbacks that are coming around. Because you look at this crop of quarterbacks coming out in college football over the next 4 years, right? You're from Dylan Raiola to Arch Manning to Shedeur Sanders, Cam Ward. Like, you could look 4 years down the line of quarterback prospects in the NFL, and you're not really seeing teams develop the pocket passers in the way that they used to develop these guys, right? You're not seeing guys come out of college with disciplined feet, with disciplined pocket mechanics, who are used to working within the structure of the pocket. You're getting guys who are used to being the better athlete on the field and doing the things that you could do in college when you are the better athlete, right? Rolling out, popping out, throwing on the run, these things that look fun on Saturdays, but when you translate them to Sundays, you have a little bit of a difficulty there, right? Not a lot of guys coming out that are used to playing on time, like Dylan Raiola. He's a great prospect, but he doesn't play on time. And if you're the Browns, you have to build an offense that can live off of what college football is producing at the quarterback position. Because I think that's been the biggest issue that the Stefanski-Berry regime has run into over the last 4 years, is not being able to adjust what is adjust quarterbacks to an old school style of offense, or adjust the offense into a new school style of offense, if you want to use that term, enough to be able to work with younger quarterbacks, right? We talk about the style of quarterback that this works with: Jacoby Brissett, Joe Flacco, Jameis Winston. It's also worth noting that all of those guys are over 30 years old. Kirk Cousins, right? You look at the quarterbacks who have been able to have sustained success in Kevin's system, they're over 30. And that's a problem for the Browns, because you got to start developing something that younger players can feel a lot more comfortable with. And when they tried to do that with Baker Mayfield in 2021, it didn't work out. When they tried to do that with Deshaun Watson, it didn't work out. And maybe that had more to do with Deshaun Watson, we're figuring out. But what I liked the most out of what we saw from Jameis is that, yeah, we saw the under center West Coast offense stuff, and that stuff worked like you would have expected it to with the dude like Jameis. But you know what else worked? The spread stuff worked beautifully. The big game winning touchdown was not a play action boot. It was a spread. It was out the spread, out the gun, straight up. It's the over route. That stuff needs to hit too, right? You need to build an offense that can feed off of what college football is producing at the quarterback position, because if you don't, you're going to draft a young guy. It's going to look like it did with Deshaun or 2021 Baker Mayfield, and you're just going to sit here and be frustrated that this guy can't do the things that you want to do. And yeah, we'll throw another 30-plus-year-old in there who's used to doing it one way, and he'll look much better in it. But at some point, you got to ask yourself, okay, how do we build an offense that can do enough of what these young guys are doing in college to buy us the time to develop them into polished pocket passers? That's the big question here, right? And I think that's why Ken Dorsey is here. It wasn't just to develop Deshaun Watson and to make Deshaun Watson more comfortable, but it was also like an understanding that this offense needed to evolve. And, you know, Jameis Winston being the backup instead of Joe Flacco, I think is another understanding that, hey, the offense needs to evolve. Because, yes, Jameis can do a lot of the same stuff that Joe Flacco could do. But Jameis is also far more comfortable in an air raid and in a spread than Joe Flacco is. I think that's a huge part of it. Jameis is much more comfortable in shotgun than Joe Flacco, right? It's a huge part of it. I think that's why he's here. I think that's why Ken Dorsey is here. Wasn't just to support Deshaun. That was a part of it for sure. But that there was also another motivation, which was for the future. And I think that's what they need to look for. So I'm happy that Jameis is going to be the starter for the rest of the year. And I'm excited to see what Jameis can do as the starter for the rest of the year. But I think I said this in my last video. I'll continue to say this in my videos. The Browns really need to figure out, okay, what has been the problem with quarterbacks under 30 for this team? Right? Because over 30, we got that. We get a quarterback over 30 here. Oh, we're going to smoke that. You know, especially if they're a pocket passer, traditional, old school style quarterback. Yeah, we got that. We're going to smoke that. But what can we do to develop somebody who maybe isn't as familiar with that? Because what they're doing, what the Browns are doing, isn't necessarily exactly how they're asking quarterbacks to win in college right now. That's the difference, right? You kind of got to teach that skill set. So it's a lot more projecting that goes on there for the Browns when you run this old school, well, not old school, but when you run, you know, this kind of style of offense that is more reliant on being proficient with your feet in the pocket. But that's my thoughts about all of this. I'm super happy that JOK is okay. Hopefully we can get an update on where he is, not just with his immediate quality of life help, but his just regular health too, because he might have an injury just based on the impact that he took on his shoulder. But thank you guys for watching. Y'all have a great day. Have a better night. Peace.